It began like a mystery out of a crime novel. A man, his 3 young children, and a disappearance that seemed to defy logic. For almost 4 years, New Zealanders whispered his name. Some saw him as a desperate father, others saw him as a dangerous fugitive. And all the while, the question remained, where were the children? This is the story of Tom Phillips, a father who vanished into the wilderness, survived as a fugitive, and left an entire country torn between sympathy and outrage. A saga that ended not in a courtroom, but in a violent confrontation on a quiet September day. December 2021, Marokopa, a small coastal settlement in New Zealand's North Island. It was here that 38-year-old Tom Phillips lived a life that, on the surface, seemed unremarkable. He was described as intelligent, capable, and resourceful. He was a father to 3 children, Jada, then 12, Maverick, 10, Ember, just 9 years old. But beneath the surface, tensions were building. A custody dispute was unfolding. Phillips, who did not have legal custody, feared losing his children. To outsiders, he seemed increasingly isolated, withdrawn, perhaps even paranoid. Then, in December, everything changed. Tom Phillips and his 3 children vanished. No note, no warning, just gone. At first, locals believed it might be a temporary escape, a man trying to shield his kids from legal battles. But days turned into weeks. The family home was empty, their vehicle was abandoned near the rugged coastline, and rumors began to swirl. Had Tom taken his children into the vast, unforgiving bushland? Had they been lost at sea, or was something darker at play? The search began. Police combed the surrounding forests, volunteers scoured the coastline, helicopters scanned the cliffs and rivers. For a time, the Phillips family dominated national headlines, and then, nothing. The trail went cold. While the rest of the country speculated, Tom Phillips was building a secret life. Hidden deep within the dense bush of the Waikato region, he created camps far from public eyes. Tarps, makeshift shelters, quad bikes, tools of a man determined to disappear. How he managed to keep 3 children alive, hidden and silent for so long, remains one of the most unsettling aspects of this story. The terrain was harsh, freezing winters, heavy rain, rugged cliffs. Yet somehow, Phillips endured. He taught his children survival skills, how to gather food, how to stay hidden, how to avoid detection. But survival came at a cost. The children grew up away from school, away from friends, away from the world. Their lives defined not by playdates or classrooms, but by secrecy and isolation. Police suspected he wasn't doing it alone. Rumors spread of sympathizers, people supplying food, fuel, or information. Yet despite tips, sightings, and nationwide appeals, Phillips remained one step ahead. The manhunt stretched on for years, and with each passing month, public opinion fractured further. Some defended him. They argued he was simply a father protecting his children from a system he didn't trust. A man pushed to extremes by desperation. But others saw something else. A man who had stolen childhoods, a father who placed his own will above the well-being of his kids, and a fugitive who seemed willing to break every law to stay hidden. For police, time only made the case more urgent. As months turned into years, the charges against Tom Phillips grew. He wasn't just a missing person, he was now wanted for burglary, for theft, for aggravated robbery, and for possessing illegal firearms. Reports emerged of break-ins across rural Waikato, farm supply stores targeted, quad bikes stolen. Locals began to lock their doors, fearing the fugitive father lurking in the shadows. And with each crime, the myth of Tom Phillips grew darker. This was no longer a custody dispute, no longer a father taking refuge with his children. This was something far more dangerous. September 8, 2025, nearly 4 years after the disappearance. It began like any other day in the small Waikato town of Piopio. But at a rural farm supply store, an alarm was triggered, a burglary in progress. Police rushed to the scene, and there they saw him, Tom Phillips, alive, on a quad bike, one of his children clinging to him as he fled. What followed was a confrontation years in the making. Police deployed spike strips to stop him. Phillips, desperate, armed himself with a high-powered rifle. Shots rang out. An officer was struck, critically injured. The peaceful countryside erupted into chaos, and then it ended. Another officer returned fire, and Tom Phillips was shot dead. Suspect down. Repeat, suspect down. Just like that, the fugitive father who had evaded police for years was gone. The immediate concern was the child who had been with him, terrified, shaken, but alive, rescued in the chaos and placed into care. But 2 children were still missing. The next day, a discovery shocked the nation. In dense bushland near Waitomo, police found a hidden campsite. There, living in secrecy, were the other two children. They were unharmed. But the details of their living conditions painted a chilling picture. Tents, tarps, weapons, and supplies scattered across the camp. The remnants of a life spent hiding from the world. Authorities moved quickly. The children were taken into the care of Oranga Tamariki, New Zealand's Ministry for Children. They were given medical checks, psychological support, and at last contact with a world they had been denied for so long. News of Tom Phillips's death spread fast. Across New Zealand, the reactions were mixed. Some mourned the loss of a man they still saw as a devoted father. Others expressed relief that the children were safe, and that a dangerous fugitive could no longer evade justice. Police officials were blunt. They described Phillips as reckless, a man who put his children at risk, a man who valued his own defiance over their well-being. At the same time, investigators began to piece together the final puzzle. How had he managed to hide for so long? Who had helped him? And how many times had he come close to capture, only to slip away again? Inside the camp, police found firearms, ammunition, and evidence of long-term planning. They found the tools of survival, and they found the traces of children forced into a life not of their choosing. The questions remain. What lasting impact will those years have on them? Can childhoods shaped in secrecy ever truly be healed? The story of Tom Phillips is not simple. It is not just a story of crime. It is not just a story of police against fugitive. It is a story of family, of desperation, of choices that can never be undone. Was he a father fighting for his children? Or was he a fugitive who sacrificed their innocence for his pride? Perhaps he was both. But what cannot be denied is this. 3 young lives were shaped by 4 years in hiding. And no matter how the public remembers Tom Phillips, whether as protector or villain, his children must now find a way to step out of the shadows he left behind. For nearly 4 years, New Zealand asked the same haunting question. Where are the Phillips children? Now we know. They were in the wilderness, living a life most could barely imagine. And the man who took them there, who kept them hidden, who evaded the law, who defied a nation, paid the ultimate price. This is not a story with heroes. It is not a story with simple answers. It is a story about the lengths one man would go to, and the devastating consequences of those choices. So I'll leave you with this. Do you see Tom Phillips as a father who loved too much, or as a fugitive who loved only himself? Let me know your thoughts in the comments. And if you found this story as haunting as I did, consider subscribing for more true crime documentaries like this one, because sometimes the darkest stories are the ones closest to home.